Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be taking a look at two different band clamps. So we have the MLCS Merle Adjustable Corner Clamp and we have this Mastercraft plasticky strap clamp that has been driving me nuts for a few years now. So let's take a look at both these and see how they hold up against each other. Okay, so before we get to actually testing them, let's take a brief look at each of these clamps. So the Mastercraft one you'll see kind of has a mess of this, let's see how wide it is. I think it's probably about 1 inch. Yeah, 1 inch wide fabric. So it's pretty strong, pretty durable. There is a tiny bit of stretch to it, which will come into play when we do our test. And the actual clamp itself is, I think it's 100% plastic. Maybe there are a couple of metal screws in there, but yeah, essentially totally plastic. And you'll even see there that the screw mechanism, which is plastic itself, often comes out of whatever mechanism is inside of this little area. I actually have had to pry this open before and then hammer it back down and to lock the strap in place. So right now it's in the open position where this can be pushed through, not easily. So I think that's something that you will see during the test of this. And then to lock it, you just pull it out and then that will lock the strap into place so that then you can tighten it down accordingly. Now each of the corners does have a cutout on the back so that you can get those nice crisp corners. And the actual corners themselves are, let's see how wide, about 1.25 inches, so or pretty much exactly 1.25 inches. So they do have pretty good distribution of pressure when it does come to clamping that up. And overall, yeah, it is a little unwieldy with the strap, and I do kind of get knots every once in a while when trying to get this all going. But let's compare that to the Merle Adjustable Clamp, and you'll see that this is almost all metal construction, and the corners themselves, let's just loosen this up a little bit. So the corners themselves have these really nice adjustable little jaws. And what this allows you to do is to use this for clamping up more than just something that's square. So whether you're doing a 3 or 6 or 8 piece item, you can get more of these corners that easily go onto the strap itself. And yeah, so it's nice to have those little pivot points just so that you do have that angular adjustment. Let's just check to see the metal strap. So again, very much all metal construction except for the jaws and the handle itself. The band is just under 1/2 inch wide, and the corners themselves are basically 1 inch. So they are a little bit less than the Mastercraft, or again, kind of the equivalent of the cheap ones, but definitely no issue with that. So the metal construction is really nice. The container here for the metal is very interesting in that it works really well, but you do have to be careful because all of a sudden, if you start to tighten it up, and you'll see it here, there is going to be tension inside here. Let me let go. You'll see it whip around. So it usually only whips around once, and if it hits your fingers, it's not that bad, but something to be aware of. And another piece that is a little frustrating with this, and I hope that they can change it on upcoming band clamps from Merle, is the locking mechanism. So in order to lock down the strap, and I usually work upside down with this clamp, it just makes it a little bit easier to grab this. You have to lock this down, but there. So now it's locked against the strap. But this piece is very frustrating to circle around like that. So I tend to just kind of have it a little loose like this, so I can just lock it like that. Otherwise, you need to pull it over to the side of the table in order to swing it around. So I would like to see them replace this with something else that is a little wider and can kind of flip around so that you can work on a flat surface. So now let's get to the clamp up and see how the two compare as far as that process. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to just pretend that this is a picture frame. So it's got mitered corners at 45 degrees. It's about 29 inches long and 14 inches wide. Both of these clamps could do very wide and very tall pieces. So that hasn't been a limitation that I've run into. And so what we need to do first of all is let's use the cheaper plastic clamp. So we need to get this into the open space there. And then we need to pull this strap through. And this can be a little bit of a process. It's not as bad right now because I have been using this for the past couple of days. And we essentially need to pull enough strap in order to get all the way around. And there we go. So what we can do is we can just loosely put these into place. Need a little bit more. And yeah, sometimes it does kind of get into a little bit of knots. There we go. So yeah, again, just loosely getting those into place. And then we have to tighten this up. And this is one of the frustrating parts with this clamp, is that it takes a lot of effort to pull this tight. There we go. And it can impact the workpiece just a little bit. Let's just loosen this. There. Okay. So now what we can do is we can just lock down these levers. We might need a little bit more pulled through. There. Now let's lock that down. And see if that's enough to tighten it up. No. Need a little bit more. So this is kind of the frustrating process with this clamp itself. There we go. So what we can do is we're pretty tight. We haven't locked or tightened down the clamp itself. So we can check the miters. They all look good. And then what we can do is we can tighten this down. There, I can feel the pressure. And so yeah, but that seems to happen a lot. It doesn't seem to apply very even pressure in all the corners. So you'll see some of the corners kind of tilt in just a little bit, and that's not because of the workpiece. That's just generally the nature of this clamp. So when you are working on essentially 3/4 inch plywood like this, or 3/4 inch wood, you do just have to be a little careful of that, just making sure that these are perfectly flat. And yeah, so it's gonna work. You don't have to get super tight for your glue ups. You could pin on the back if you want during that, tape it, kind of whatever you want. But the reality is that if I pick this up, it's going to come off. Whereas on the other clamp, you'll see that that's not gonna happen. So it was very tight, but I can just lift it off and then all these are loose. So now to clean this up, or to get it ready to be put away, we have to pull all this fabric back through, which I find, there, let's just open that up, is actually the worst process with this clamp. Getting it open is one thing. It just gets stuck all the time. There we go. All right. So then we can essentially just put all this into a ball and throw it in a drawer. So not an awful clamp, it's going to do the job for you. It can be a little annoying to work with, and just like the even distribution of weight just isn't great on it, especially when you're working with some smaller pieces like this ply. So now let's take a look at the Merle clamp, and let's just get this squared up a little bit more. And as I mentioned earlier, just because of the bottom here with this piece, I do generally like to use this upside down. It allows me to use this in the way that I want. And there we go. So what we're going to do is we're basically just going to feed through a bunch of band. So there, we just loosened a bunch. We can then feed it through here. The band itself is pretty high quality and not too sharp to the touch. So on the edges, it's not too bad. Definitely a little bit, but no more than what you would probably expect. So let's get these corners roughly positioned. I do really, really, really like the corner pieces with this. So we've fed too much through, so what we can do is we can just easily pull that. So see how easy that was compared to the Mastercraft. Need a bit more. There we go. Corners in place. There, so it is nice with these jaws. It does take a little bit more finagling sometimes just to get it perfect, but it's easier to get it perfect with this one. There, so we can put that down. We can lock this up. There, we got it nice and tight. You can see on these bands just how tight it is with that music we're making, and the pressure is very even. So the corners are not lifting in like it was on the other clamp. And in fact, we can even pick it up and actually move the workpiece around a little bit. So even though the band itself is only 1/2 inch versus the 1 inch on the other piece, it seems to distribute much more even pressure in the corners, and the little adjustable jaws, or the auto adjusting jaws on each of the corners, makes it really easy just to get a nice fit with any sort of workpiece, whether you're working with a square or rectangle like this, or if you're working with a hexagon or triangle, anything else like that. So yeah, really nice in order to kind of get that really nice clamp. And then what we can do to loosen it is we can release that. And all of a sudden it's very easy to lift all the corners off. Then what we can do is we can just pull the metal banding all the way through. And then we can coil it up. And just like before, there, it's getting caught in a little bit. There we go. It's just getting caught in the other clamp. So once we get all this coiled up, again, there'll be a lot of tension in there. So we're just going to let it go. And then we're all set. So clamp is all ready to go and be stored away. So much easier than it is with the cheaper plastic band and strap clamp. So for me, overall, I mean, you're dealing with two very different types of clamps, but not overly different price points. So kind of $12-ish for a plastic one on Amazon.com when I was just checking. And the Merle Adjustable Corner Clamp is around $30. So yeah, it is more expensive, but much more durable, easier to use, just better build quality, and a lot larger. Just take a look at that. And you can get additional corners if you are working with any sort of unique size piece. So this isn't meant to be an in-depth review, but I did want to compare these two types of clamps. And my plan is to get another one of the Merle, so I can use that for some of my cabinet making. I will probably hang on to the Mastercraft just in case I need it, or for working in the middle of a piece. And I do find that these teeth are generally quite nice for that. So anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll have more videos coming soon.